So another year's done and I read a decent amount, though that's because half of them aren't all that long. I petered out by the end, but that's all because I finished like Labyrinth Meister and that's around like 100 hours, maybe 110. I was planning this year to be like more about the fan discs and all these expansions I had, but I failed pretty hard at it. I'm limiting the amount of brackets, so something like a low 8 could be anywhere from like 80 to an 85. I'll probably specify, but I might change my mind later, but a lot of this just to save space on the screen. Just like last year, the first run of the list will be a little less on the subjective side. It takes the genre into consideration, otherwise something like a Moe title gets dropped further down. The other thing is I'll take what it was going for into consideration as well. Basically, I won't let my bias for some genres like completely nuke it to the ground. The second tier list will be more on what I enjoyed the most, and the last one is based on like the impact spikes. So if something really cool happens or there's a strong moment, but it's only like an hour of like 40 hours or whatever, it'll show up, otherwise it might be lower on the normal tier list. I made videos on some of these and those labels will be on green, or if there's something like, oh, I wrote about it but I never pushed it out, it'll be on yellow, which means like it'll be out eventually, maybe in a year, maybe in 2 years, who knows. So speaking of taking genre in consideration, Rance is getting a 7 just for humor and gameplay. It's a remake of the 90s version, you can tell right away. The humor is rather crude, and what you have with the gameplay doesn't really hold your hand at all. It's still rather easy, and there's no time limit, so it's pretty hard to screw yourself over. So I'm giving it a low 7, but you can dump into a 5 if the humor's not for you. It basically gets like nostalgia points if you enjoyed the more like cryptic style of gameplay back in the 90s. Normally I rate it more based on like the plot, but Rance isn't really trying to be having like a heavy ass plot, it's not trying to be serious. So it feels almost unfair to criticize it when it's more of like an adventure game where someone tells you to save this person. It's like, alright, I'll do it. I'm putting Even If Tempest at high 7. This one is one of those titles that I saw pretty hard on the list by the end. I think I made the title of the video something like, oh, if Garland crashed Umineko or something. It makes sense if you play Stranger to Paradise. Anyways, this witch is fucking around with this idol looking person. She's really pissed off. So every time she dies, she resets back to some set time that she specified beforehand, and then she just keeps on going, solely to beat the shit out of this witch. There's more going on, but the score is lowered a bit because it leaves a couple of things open-ended and the fan disc was made, then these things get answered over there, but that's annoying. This is one that teeters around between like a low 8 or a high 7. If the fan disc was at least part of the original title, then it'd be like a high 8 or maybe even a low 9, but that's maybe kind of pushing it. I had a lot of fun with it, but there's like issues on it. The fan disc itself is like the first Utomi fan disc that I've read. There's a route that's pretty gay, but yeah, I'm not in that demographic, so it makes sense. That answers a couple questions from the original title, but half of them are like kind of simple or boring. But that's more of a fault on me where I was thinking too much into it or making things a lot bigger than it had to be. And then the other stuff is great and it went really far out there, so it's like, is it my fault for thinking things would go far out there because they fucking did it? So why are these huge and these are just like, oh yeah, he was an asshole, that's it. It's like, what the fuck? I'd still say that this and the base title should have been like one larger title, and it'll be some like, oh, 35 hours, 40 hours, something like that, instead of like a 20-hour thing and another, I guess 15 or something like that. One is Maeda's title before Key started, it's him and Hisaya, and there's this like whole interview that's pretty interesting that goes over like Moon all the way to Kanan. Technically I read the original one and the remake at the same time, or rather I saw it back and forth for each route. Anyways, it's really rough. Maeda's comedy's there, he really loves it and it's still going in like HBR right now. I don't know if I should add HBR or not because like it's technically there, I just didn't finish it yet. Anyways, this is one of those titles that suffer because there's like two writers and there's no interaction between them. I'm pretty sure their respective characters don't even interact with each other, so this gets into like a 6 for like failed potential, to the point that I almost put it into a 5. The comedy is subjective, I like it, some people don't, it's fine. There were some jokes here and there that were cut from the original and I'm not sure why because those were pretty funny at the time. In the end, what I thought would be like half slice of life and half about the premise, about the eternal world, became almost all slice of life and almost all of the drama is near identical per route. It's like, what the fuck you doing? So yeah, a lot of cool things that could have been happening, not really happened. I'm putting the first part of Criminal Border at high 7 and the second one at mid 7. There's still 2 more going on and you can pre-order the third one right now, but still a couple months already and it's not been out, so what the fuck's going on there? I'm still waiting for Geminism, honestly. It's like, where the fuck's that too? Anyways, it's about this one loser guy that makes shitty AMVs, and one ended up being like able to mess up people's psyches to be like massive horn dogs. His acquaintance tries to like make a business out of it, and most of the plot centers around that. He makes friends, he betters himself, whilst also going further like down into this mess. It's what the title name is about, it's borderline criminal. A lot of the characters are interesting and set up well in the first chapter, whilst the second chapter is more like a continuation of their descent. It's not bad, some parts are better in the sense that like the loser shtick annoys me less and it doesn't really happen that much in chapter 2. I have an idea of what's going to go down and I think that's part of the fun for me at this point. I think that's only going to happen in maybe chapter 4 but in the finale, so maybe part 3 is going to be even lower than this one, who knows. I'm putting Harem Kingdom at a low 7. I started the title thinking that it was just me trying to be like, oh, let's make a porn title out of nowhere. And it's the reason why I pushed it back for a while, but it ended up being pretty funny. It's really dumb, but that's what I expect and enjoy from Smee. It does become a lot more porn heavy during the routes, and that's kind of unfortunate since it was becoming my favorite Smee title until then. In terms of enjoyment, it goes way up, but in a more standard sense, a lot of the routes don't really do much outside of the comedy sections, though it's more that the voice acting carried a lot of the comedy anyway. If it was just on the common route, I could see myself putting this in an 8. So it's more of that doing all the routes tired me out. If you're more of a vanilla gooner, then maybe it'll be a 9, who knows. I'm putting Virche Evermore on a high 8. I can see it as a 9 as well, but that's after ignoring like Malthus's route, otherwise it would be a 9. The main character's interesting in terms of premise, but her personality is understandably dull. It's about this island where everybody in it will live to like at most 23 years, so another guy made a scientific breakthrough that clones your body and memories into like this other clone shit, so it's like another lease of life. But a lot of the shit is happening around this girl, so she's been labeled like death personified. It's one of those titles where the finale carries the plot a lot, and everything before then are just stepping stones for it. Think of it like Ever 17. It's well done, I liked it a lot. I hated Malthus's route. Unfortunately, I think that's also like the first route normally you take, but it's either her or Lucas, or rather him, I guess. I'm putting Winter Polaris at a high 7. A lot of that is because the VN split between 2 plots, and I had a lot more fun with Winter Polaris and Sweeper Swimmer. They meld well together and it all makes sense, but I prefer the tone of Winter Polaris anyway, and I think that's what Polaris did really well, with just the tone. It's about a pandemic where people just randomly disappear, and it's not in the sense like, oh, they're kidnapped or you don't know where they go. No, they literally go poof and all you see is your clothes on the floor. So yeah, it's more of like, oh, the atmosphere is amazing, the tone is great, and personally, I put it higher, but it's not for everyone, so like, it's really fair to put it into like 8 when it's, a lot of people wouldn't say it is. I'm putting Nukitashi 2 as a low 8. For a while I was considering this as a 9 when I was reading it, and it is if all I'm considering is the main route. It centers around June and the 3 main rivals that were like somehow more compelling than the actual leads in the original. They get isekai into this alternate world where June works for the faction that he was rebelling against in the original, and it's like, it is a fun time, it's very interesting. There's all these after stories for all the like the previous routes, and it's just more. It's fanfare for whichever character you liked. It's like, alright, it's fine. I like Masaki, so I like Masaki's rap. A lot of these, like, it's not really for me. I don't care about any of this. It's more that the main route is amazing, and all this extra stuff just isn't in the same league, so it's like, you fucked it up. Sure, the finale doesn't hit the same like impact peak as the original, but everything is a lot more consistent and the joke repetition isn't glaring as it was before, so something I saw like as a low 9 becomes like a middle or to like low 8. It's like, ah, oh, shit. Still probably one of my favorites of this year. Slay the Princess is the one English title I read. It's kind of around the same boat as Nukitashi, where the initial run was amazing and doing the subsequent runs I had to do to finish all the routes just pushed it down to a high 8 instead. The plot is interesting enough, but it's about character interactions and the charisma some of these characters bring. It's a lot about tone and atmosphere again. I just had a really lucky run in the first time where all 5 routes or whatever are all amazing. It's like, holy shit, this is great. And it's like later on, it's like, hey, a lot of other ones are also great, but also a lot of ones are very lackluster. There's a new update that just happened like 2 months ago or something that I think some of them patched some of the crappier ones and added more stuff, so I didn't finish it yet, or I didn't start it on the updates. So maybe this is up back to a 9. I just don't know yet. Anyways, it's more of a choose your adventure type of game where you and the narrator fuck around and other voices join here, and like there's a lot more trolling here. Then out of nowhere, oh, now this creepy dude and now a sim comes in. It's like, what the fuck's happening here? Then there's like another guy that's trolling. It's like, nah, just do it, throw knives at the window. It's like, what the fuck? It's funny. I think part of the issue I'm having is the final impact is great for the first time, but it loses its value when you have to see it like 5 more times if you want to do every route. It's like, I think that kind of fucked it up. I'm putting Marco at a 6. It has a lot of energy to it, and I'm sure they were having like a great time making it, but after the initial unexpected bang of being like flooded with new CGs every couple of seconds, the latter half felt really rushed. Not in terms of CGs or anything, just the plot's like, it just keeps on going. It feels like there was another 3 hours and it wasn't there. And I think I've read somewhere, it's like, yeah, actually that is the case. There was these characters that were supposed to be important, and later on it's like, oh, she ran away, now you found her, and it was like in the span of under a minute. It's like, what the fuck's happening here? Anyways, it does remind me of like Fooly Cooly a bit. It's all zany, all over the place, while having its own message of going out there and making your own journey and having fun doing it. It's like, alright, I get the tone, I get the message. And I think I made the title for this like one where it's this one and Winter Polaris were more about having the experience and enjoying it than the actual plot. So that's why it's all the way down here. Winter Polaris on itself still has a decent plot to it, so that's why it's up there. If it really did have like the extra 3 hours, I think I would put this pretty high as well. It's not for me, but I get why people like it. Mandemon is one of the 2 Chinese VNs I've read. They're actually both from the same person. Anyways, your guy has amnesia, and it's in this like dystopian area where there's all this ongoing wars, and you're in this school, and you get trained to go into being the soldier ship, but you also have to farm. You have to do everything yourself. It's fucking annoying. But then out of nowhere, there's like this, you know, it's already a bleak situation. Now people are dying in the school, so now you have to figure out what's happening. And it's like, oh, it's the Mandemon. They're losing their humanities and crap like that. But yeah, that's like, okay, that's the plot. It makes sense, it's fun, it's a good premise. And then out of nowhere, like maybe the last third or so just falls apart and like, what the fuck's happening? The art is pretty great, but a lot of the soundtrack choices end up making me laugh with how weirdly placed they are in some of these endings. Like, why are you playing that right now? So, you know, cool premise. It was decent, just not enough to put over a 6. Then there's Kanna Maze, it's the other Chinese VN. It's a lot better than Mandemon to the point I'm putting this like a mid-7 in terms of like what they're going for, but personally I put it even higher because the humor just works for me. This one is about a person taking some part-time work, but it ends up being like, oh, you and the couple people that joined in there have to travel miles down into this from this elevator to like underground, and shit just goes down really fast. It's closer to like a choose your adventure type of thing. You get new info and new options get unlocked. Sometimes even the prologue, you just keep on skipping everywhere. Kind of gives you like Uchikoshi vibes, and the guy that wrote like 999, or he worked with the Infinity series. Like, it's just weird like that. It's very cool. I liked it a lot. Hopefully he makes more things like this. I liked it. IroSekai fluctuates between a low 8 and a high 7, mainly because there's a lot of fodder in the first half. Sometimes I hover around an 8 because the latter half was amazing and it uses all these elements from the former half to make it work, and it makes everything retroactively make sense. It's like, oh, this was amazing how you use this here to here. It's kind of the same reason why I eventually placed like Ever 17 a little lower in my tier list all the way back then, because it's kind of unfair to put this amazing final part and it's like just move this whole VN into a 10 when it's like, actually some of these kid routes are shit. Because yeah, it's like, oh, last route was amazing, holy shit. But some of these like other routes or some of this like common plot, it's like, holy shit, this is a moe slop. This is like below average moe slop. Holy shit, what'd you do? How'd you make this amazing thing? And then this little shit over there is like, holy crap. Collar Malice is a popular Tomei title. How it starts is amazing. How you have to reset this character that's more or less useless for the job after every route is not. It works rather well as like an actual true crime novel where the first 100 pages or so after the initial setup goes into like a snail's pace, like, holy, just keep on moving. I'm putting this into a high 7, but it's more one of those titles where I could see this being a high 9 if everything was integrated into like this one kinetic novel experience instead of having like a route for all of them and you have to reset the character every time. It's like, holy shit, she's always useless. Some of these routes aren't even all that good anyway, so it's like, wow. So it's not just like, oh, there's all this repetition, but also each route kind of leads to a different suspect to make the plot work. So the clues are kind of like piecemealed, but then you have to start from scratch again until the last route, and you know what you're going for and what her role is, and it's done well, but it takes forever to get there. It's just something that was like 50 hours long that could have been something like 25, maybe 30. Another part is the female lead position is kind of wasted on what we get. It's used as a placeholder so you can put like yourself as the character. I'm not a fan of that type of thing. And she has enough going for her that she's still like her own character. It's just enough so it's possible that she can help, but nowhere near enough that any expertise actually needs her. It's like, why are you here? I can see this as an 8 though. It does feel like a crime fiction novel where the first 100 pages are a crawl, and it eventually gets interesting, like, holy shit, this is happening. I think it was the fourth route. Fourth route was fucking amazing. Fifth route, not as amazing, but still good. You know what's going on already. It's like, alright, it's fine. Aoi Tori is in the same boat as IroSekai, where it really does shine in the true route, but everything else is like, holy shit, what is this? The main character is more often boring, and at times it does feel like Purple Software is trying to make like another porn title with this one. It tries to use elements from the other routes, but overall it's like, you're just a weaker IroSekai with the differences between like, hey, okay, some of these routes are ass, but actually Seo's route's pretty good, instead of like the other one where a lot of these routes are kind of ass. I think it's also like my least favorite from the Purple Software team, which isn't awful considering I'm a fan of their stuff. So instead of like teetering between a 7 or 8 with like IroSekai, this one does stay at like a low 7. And that's sometimes, I think on VMDB I actually put this as a 6 because like, holy shit, this in more retrospect, I'm like, it wasn't that bad. Soumei was written by the same guy that did Winter Polaris. He wrote a decent amount of stuff that I liked. Soumei can't really compare with Winter Polaris based on tone or pacing, but it's a fun read overall. It meanders around in the midsection, but the start and finish are solid. More like Christmas teen where it can get a wider audience where it's either more cheery or more sassy depending on which section you're on. I like it more than Christmas Tina, but I think I'm in like in the minority of that. So I find it totally understandable putting this into like a high 6 instead of 7. It's one of those things where the ending is fine, the beginning is fine. I think it's meanders too much like I said before, and that's like the point where it maybe should be into a 6, but I think the other sections landed well, so it's like, no, actually it is a low 7. Majikoi A5 is one of the like last expansions from the Majikoi series. I think there's like 2 extra ones. I'm covering the other one afterwards. It does cover like Yoshitsune and expands upon Margit, and it does take like another revisit on Takai one or Takai, whatever the fuck you say it. Yoshitsune had the most budget, but also felt like a Benkei route where it wasn't really my thing. But for those that were like, oh, it's one of those standards. Here's this warrior girl, and she wants more of a normal life with the inner conflict of needing to be like this warrior thing, and it does it well enough. It's fine. But to me, it's like, all right, I've seen this before. I've seen this in Benkei, so what the fuck? Do something else. Margit adds your whole troop in there, but they're like touched on a very surface level. It was the same problem with A4, where it's like, oh, there's all these Chinese things. Like each one has maybe 30 minutes each. Like, what? Why? Anyways, Takai or Takai, whatever how you pronounce it, was the one that surprised me a lot. And it really felt like something that would come out of the first Majikoi series. Like, holy shit, this is amazing. I'm putting it as like a low 7, but if it was just Takai, I might actually put this an 8 just for bias. Like, oh, this was a good title. This was a good route. Then there's like Margit After, whatever it's called, which goes a little further into all the troops again. It's still somehow surface level because guess what? This fucking title's like 2 hours long for 6 characters. Like, how? What do you think? It's like, all right. It feels like some guys like, hey, actually, I like these characters. Can I make a new thing? And they're like, go for it. It's fine. I'm putting this like a 6 because it does its job. It's more of a basic fan disc. It's fine. But otherwise, I'd put it like a 5 sometimes. It's like, because I actually like these characters. These characters' designs are cool. You did nothing with them. Still fun, just nothing different. I quite like Eustia. It's a lot darker than a lot of the other stuff from August. I think Fortune had some stuff like this, but it's been like 10 years since I've seen like the reviews or whatever, and maybe I'm mixing things up. Anyways, it does technically have like a lot of structure, but it's done really poorly. I'm pretty sure I talked about it in the video. I just won't go over it again because like that's all spoilers and crap. Either way, once you enter the route, it's pretty much over in like under an hour. Basically, it's close to a character arcs, and that just has an ending if you choose to go there. It's like, all right, it's worse than Jisenjo at this point. It's a title where the intro and the finale is what makes the title shine. There's a lot of great stuff in there, but there's also a lot of like arcs where the main character is meandering about and doing like very little because like, oh, it needs to space out the days because oh, sometimes it's like info gathering or whatever. It's like, oh, you can't be info gathering for 10 minutes and find everything. That makes no sense. So it's like spaced out like that. It's like, all right, it's fine. I understand, but also you are meandering a bit. So overall, I'm putting as an 8. Small tweaks would put as a 9, but mostly leaning parts down would help it a lot. Also, there's some characters where, you know, there could be more for it or to do more with them, and they didn't really do anything. It's like, all right, that also messed up, but that wouldn't really lower my scores. Like, oh, these would be nice to haves. I kind of bought Secret Agent as a joke, where I thought it wasn't going to be great, and it'd be like another one of those where it's like, hey, decent premise, but only as like a disguise for an average-ass Moe title. It's pretty much what it is, but I had a weird experience with it because technically, I had the worst time during the common plot. There's a lot of random intermissions that either explain things that were just shown like half an hour ago, or random stuff that everybody already knows, like, why are you telling me this? So you question like, what was the point of, why? This is so dumb. And it's not like the routes themselves are like a step up from the common route. And I think my brain just shut down and just says like, okay, just enjoy everything right now. It's like in Metal Gear Solid 3 where you force feed Snake these mushrooms that he hates, but by the end of the game, or even 3/4 of the game, he loves this shit because it's like, I just kept force feeding this shit because I had so much of it. And it feels like I hated this so much that I just wrapped around. It's like, it's not that bad. I have fun. It's fine. The finale was pretty cool, and there's parts here and there where it's like, hey, actually, this is fine, this is fun. I had a good time with this, but I can't really go to anyone who's like, hey, you should read this title. It's like, no, don't read this title. It's ass. Especially for its length, I think it's like 20 to 25 hours. Like, how do you make so much? How it's so padded, and it felt like nothing happened. It's functional, and there's nothing wrong with it, and it fundamentally doesn't really go under a 5. It's like, it's fine. I just didn't really feel insulted by it either. It's like, all right, there's been worse titles, but also it's like, why would I read this? What the fuck? Why pass me? You're so dumbass. Yeah, I think like Everlasting Flowers is great. I'm still laughing for fucking Secret Agent. But it's uh but it's like Winter Polaris or Marco, where it's more about the experience and the character interactions, and like the actual plot isn't all that important for it. It's pretty basic. It's a short title. I think it's like 6 hours long, so I can't say much without spoiling parts here and here, or here and there. But I'm pretty sure I kept its own like video short for that reason as well. It's just about a kid working at this cafe when she's lost. Not lost as in like physically lost, like she doesn't know what to do. She kind of wants to kill it. Not really, but she's like, I just want to end it. I hate this life. And it's like, oh, after a while going through this, like, hey, it's actually not that bad. I have a good time here. So it's all about the tone. It's about the character interactions. Everything was fun. It was very cute. But yeah, the plot's very basic. It's not really about the plot. Also, there's a lot of CGs. Well, you can cut like half of it, it wouldn't change much. The music is also, it was fine. I like some tracks here and there, but it's more like for ambient thing than anything else. So I'm putting this a low 8, and like the good part of this, like, hey, it knows not to waste your time. It's pretty concise overall. I liked it a lot. Café Enchante is the last Otomi I've read for the year. Technically, I'm reading another one right now, but it's being stalled for other titles, and now when I'm doing this, I forgot what the Sakura whatever title for like winter shit is coming out. I think tomorrow or something. It's like I might read that. I doubt I can finish it before the month's over anyway, so that's why I'm making this. But anyway, this is basically like the final boss fucker, which is like the adjacent of monster fucker trope. Her grandpa gave the main character this cafe, opens the door inside the cafe, and there's like all these weird beings just pop out. We're like, what the fuck is that? And then, you know, they just come in, they make their own coffee, they try to make their own meals, and it ends up being like, all of them are basically like the strongest being in their respective worlds, and it swaps between being very chill and very bombastic depending on the setting or where you are at the point, right? And the whole idea is like these beings love the cafe because at least they have some kind of respite from the worlds. And Archer from FSN is also one of the characters in here, and yet again he's basically the normal guy in comparison. It's like, dude can't catch a break. He can't be the most OP ever. I'm putting it as like a low 7, but I question it if it could be like a higher 7. And I don't think it does enough to be there, but in terms of like vibes, great. I also feel like the Angel's Ride is better than the Locked finale. Technically, the finale does everything it needs to. It uses the rest as stepping stones, it explains any questions you have away, and overall it does it really well, but the last quarter felt somewhat rushed. Actually, fuck it. I think it did a really good job in like world building shit. So yeah, put in a high 7. It's fine. Amayui Labyrinth Meister is a sequel of Castle Meister. So instead of having like adventures with Avaro and Fia, it's more now adventures them with the new daughter called Kuna. It's kind of more of the same, but the highs aren't as high, or rather, there's just less of them. This is more like a last hurrah for the whole team. Everything related to like crafting and the shop is severely downgraded, and some other stuff was introduced, but outside of like joining units into a group to get like more moves, all of it can just be ignored, and it wasn't all that great. Basically, crafting is now more to like just to get your gear up, which is boring, or get better spells, and the better spells are pretty subjective if they're even better because they cost a lot more MP. And my whole game, I used basic ass spells and I beat everything. It's not that hard of a game. Honestly, it's on the baby level side. Basically, it's an 8 that has like parts better and some parts worse from the original title. It was fine. I liked it a lot. I liked the ending a lot. If you interact with the little baby from your family, I think this title makes a lot more sense of why I liked it so much. It's like the Walking Dead series from all the way back then. It was like the first season or so with Clementine, I think her name was. Like, oh, like shit, you know, this kid, it's a nice kid, poor thing, fucking zombie apocalypse is bad, let's take care of her. And it's like, the plot itself wasn't amazing, but it's like, alright, it was Lee taking care of the kid, and that was the plot, and it was great. Curtain Call is a funny one because I was really hating on it for the first like hour or two. Honda is a stereotypical punk rocker, something that they were trying to disprove or just go away from in the original title. But after a while, it kind of matures, but more often than not, it's more about the other characters or even the returning characters that save it. So it went from like a low 6 to maybe even a 5 to a mid 7. Technically, if it was only had like Murakami, which is one of the characters from the original game, or the original title, I put as like a low 8 because it did really well on what it was trying to do. Just from like its tone and crap like that. It's kind of like Musicus, but Musicus was after, so you can't really say like, oh, you copied it. It's like, alright, it's fine. Basically, it's just like one last hurrah from the initial cast. I know there's like one more title. I think it's like the Deerdrops versus Kirikira or something. And, you know, I'll read it eventually, but for now, it's like this really does seem like the ending for the Kirikira cast. Sparking Youth would have been an 8 if it wasn't for Nagiko. Sure, it's an overall like Moe title with a vibe check. There's a couple of titles in here where the genre or what they're going for is put into consideration, and this is one of them. Some routes are pretty goofy or just like fluffy, and they did well like alongside some of the actual good moments, so I can't really push it down all that much. There's also 2 locked routes where, yeah, it's still kind of goofy, especially the sister one, but also provides a lot of like background info that you need, or a lot of like, it does a genre shift, like holy shit, this is amazing, it's not what you expect from a Moe title. So yeah, I can even see people's like, actually this is a 9. It also, actually I did make a video of this. Yeah, it's like the whole thing, it's technically, you know, Kinkoi does the genre shift as well. I think it's actually not as good as Kinkoi's genre shift, but the thing is, overall, all the routes are a lot better than Kinkoi's. So yeah, it basically teeters around, you know, high 7, low 8. Chaos Head No is a weird one because you can rate it in 2 ways, the title as a whole or just the expansion of the original. Basically, I read the whole thing again, and the common route doesn't seem to have all that many changes. I was checking around, and even parts I thought was like, hey, was this actually here? It actually was. I just forgot about it. So as a whole, as like a new reader, I'd put it around like Chaos Child, so around like a low 8. I used to have like Chaos Child a little higher, while having like some nitpicks, but now I'm kind of putting them at the same place. A lot of this is based if you can tolerate Takumi or not. If you can, the character is really well done. Otherwise, he's another Honda from Current Call, but actually written well this time. It does peter off by the last third, where it could have been leaned down, but still a lot less than what you'd have to go through for Chaos Child and their routes near the end. Chaos Head's ending's also kind of worse in comparison, but at least a bit of the new side routes are done a lot better than Chaos Child's routes, especially like Senna's route. That one was amazing. If anything, that's probably the only thing I'd be like, actually, this was worth reading this. But for someone that read it like ages ago, the writing isn't that charming anymore to go over the whole thing again. Maybe the first 2 chapters at most. Like, it's pretty normal for like something to drop after the second read. It's like, oh, you know the hooks, you know the impact, you know what's going to go happening. It's like, alright. But I've read Symphonic Rain again, like last year, and I had no complaints. Like, I was like, oh, this is still as charming, it's still as great. I understand what they're going, I already know what all the hooks and shit, but it's still great. So yeah, I can't really use that like excuse for Chaos Head. Just like, oh, I read it before. It's like, So it's close to a low 7 at best, if you're considering all of that. So for people that never read the title at all, yeah, this is like a low 8, maybe high 7. And then there's Heaven Burns Red. It's a gacha game made by Maeda. I haven't finished it, so it's not really fair, but let's say up to chapter 2, because that's where I'm at. I finished chapter 2, I'm in the middle of chapter 3, I have complaints on it. There's a lot of things that like, Maeda loves the same jokes, it's always the same jokes. It's very repetitive in the first chapter, it's like, holy shit, this is fucked up. Second chapter is amazing. Still, a lot of the issues with Heaven Burns Red is basically it's like, oh, we have to do this operation. Cool. Operation as in like a deployment. Okay, cool. Let's do all this training. This training is like half the chapters all the time. Even the third one, I'm doing the stupid ass training. And then after that, okay, now do the actual deployment. And then that's when shit happens. Oh, all these feelings, all the character interactions, amazing. Until then, it's like 2/3 of it's like you're doing the training. It's like, holy crap. There's all these like side stories as well. You can unlock them. I think I've read 4. So far 3 are amazing. 1, it was fine. I don't remember any of the names. So overall, it's like, it's super leaned down. Like normally I say like, I should lean this down. I think this one's leaned way too much, but the impacts are really still amazing. Maeda still can do it, right? Overall, I liked it a lot. I'm giving still like a 7, a mid 7. There's parts where it's like, oh, this is a 9. This was amazing, but it's like a lot of it feels undeserved sometimes. There's a lot of cool, like interesting premises that I'm seeing. I don't know how it's going to land, and that's why I can't really score this one all that well that much. So I'm just putting like middle of the road. So now that the tier list is done, this will be the one that's more about like how much I had fun with it or how much I enjoyed it. So something like even if in Tempest where it's like, hey, I had some issues with it, but it was actually amazing. There's something like Kanna Maze where again, some issues or, you know, it's not the most amazing plot, but I had a lot of fun with it. Something like Virche Evermore where I had some issues with the themes, like it's not really for me, so I didn't really have that much fun with it, so it goes down. A lot of like little things, but this is what it is. The next one is the hype one. A lot of this is like, oh, maybe this one route is really amazing. So like, oh, the IroSekai and the Nukitashis are higher, the Virche Evermore's higher, even if Tempest is higher. And then there's some where it's like, maybe the current call, maybe a little higher, maybe it could be like low 8, who knows? Maybe Everlasting Flowers, maybe a little lower. Maybe Marco can be like low 8 as well, but it's more like, you know, look at this on the higher one. It's like, actually, these were better. So it's one of those things like, actually, I think this list is fine the way it is.